Welcome to Mystery of the Soul. I'm your co-host Erin, and I'm joined by my friend Leo, a psychic medium and Reiki master. Our podcast explores the depth of the soul, the spiritual, and the supernatural.
Hey, Erin.
Hi, Leo. How are you?
Good. Who's that next to you?
This is my cat, Kitten. Can I tell you the story about how she got her name?
Yeah.
Okay, so Kitten is kind of like a lame name for a cat. But this was, 7, 8 years ago, living in New York City and walking home one night in like February, and there was supposed to be this massive cold snap in the city. And as I was walking home, there was this cat. She was basically a kitten at the time on the street, on the sidewalk. And she just started like meowing at me. And I thought, oh, she must be feral. But I just kind of walked over to her and then crouched down to see if she was friendly or not. She was very friendly. She started like figurating between my legs and purring. And she was really small at the time. She was maybe 5, 6 months old. And I was worried about her being out on the streets and like it was supposed to be like below zero cold. So I already had a cat and a dog at home, and I thought, oh, what am I gonna do? So I tried to pick her up to see if like she was friendly or not, and she was totally fine. And I had like one of those big puffer jackets, and I just unzipped it, shoved her in, tucked her in, zipped it back up, and she started purring in there. Took her home, kept her separate from my other animals, and then got her into the vet the next day for shots and exam and all of that. And I had planned I named her Kitten because I didn't want to keep her, right? I was like, I'm just going to foster her and get her into a good home, and that should be good. And I had her a couple weeks, and I had already made an arrangement with like the local shelter for cats, like a local nonprofit for cats, and told them that I would keep her and I would pay for her as her foster because we used their network to get a home for her. So they were like, great. So I went and got her spayed. And when I brought her home that night, she slept in like the dog crate just so she could have some peace and quiet. And my other cat, Kona, slept outside that crate the whole night. And I thought,
oh, really?
Oh my God, they bonded. So the next day I was like, all right, I called the shelter and I said, I think I'm going to keep her. And of course they were like, great, one less cat for them to place. But that is the story of how I wound up with Kitten and why she's named Kitten.
Wow.
And she's joining us on our podcast today.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We're animal friendly.
We are animal friendly. How are you? How have you been?
I'm okay. I think as I told you, I think a few days ago, I think I got another kidney stone, so I've been dealing with that.
Yeah.
So that's always fun.
Yeah.
But I'm not in pain all the time. It's just like unpredictable. It's intermittent. So it's something that's tolerable right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been intermittent. It's tolerable. I've, taken some Tylenol. And it's funny, my wife has a friend who's a nurse, and she has a friend that has had a lot of kidney stones in the past. And so she recommended some stuff like a herbal, I don't even remember the name of it. But it's something that's considered like a stone breaker, and it's good for your kidney health, urinary tract, and all that stuff. So I ordered like a concentrate that you can take like a couple tablespoons a few times a day until like you feel like the symptoms of the pain diminishing from the kidney stone, and eventually it's supposed to hopefully dissolve it and make it easier to pass. So I'm hoping to use that once it comes in, and then probably I'm guessing in another month, the doctor's office will probably want to do another ultrasound to see if anything's changed. Is the stone still there or not? But I did have the ultrasound Friday and just waiting this week for the doctor to just go over the report with me, but I'm pretty sure the report said there was a kidney stone. So
Oh, so they saw it on the ultrasound?
they did, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
All right.
yeah, enough about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to hear about this, what the nurse suggested, because I have a couple friends who suffered from kidney stones too, so
I will
I'll
keep you
find.
posted.
You can tell me about that. Okay. So today, Kitten and I, Leo, are going to talk to you about intuition versus anxiety. That's a pretty cool topic, huh?
Yep, I think they wanted to be here for this.
Okay. So for our listeners who can't see, my cat has basically curled up in my arms, and she's very much now going to be an active part of this interview. So here we go. There are 3 podcasters with us today.
I think Kitten says, or the vibe I'm getting from her is like, she is kind of one of your coping strategies for anxiety.
Yes.
So she's like, I should be here.
Hilarious. She's a very good coping mechanism for anxiety. Cats get a bad rap sometimes, but I feel like they're actually very, very sensitive, and they know what's going on when you're not feeling great. Yeah, so intuition versus anxiety, that's an interesting one. This was your topic. Tell me a little bit about why you picked it.
Well, as before we just got on here recording, I had made a comment about like most people that have, I'll say, maybe a stronger awareness of their intuition usually also have anxiety and deal with anxiety because they're more sensitive. And so because they're more sensitive, like both sides, the anxiety and the intuition is stronger.
Yeah, that's so interesting when you said that. And I'm glad that you started with that, because I think that's a great place to start. I have a bunch of questions for you, but before we like dive into all my questions, I know that you have some thoughts, like you're going to walk us through a little bit about what anxiety looks like and feels like, and what intuition looks like and feels like. So why don't I just roll it over to you, because I think that's a really important foundation for the rest of our conversation.
Okay. So kind of what I was getting, and I kind of checked in with my guides about this topic, and it was funny. I was at Whole Foods the other day eating a sandwich, and I was listening, actually, I think, to a podcast that kind of like stirred the pot for the whole anxiety versus intuition thing. And I came up with this concept of comparing anxiety and intuition as comparing 2 different perspectives. So anxiety being like a first person perspective, like being in it, and intuition being more of an observer and a third person perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so with anxiety, I mean, I know you and I both can talk about anxiety, but anxiety is very emotional when we feel it. A lot of the emotions and the feelings, whether it's emotional, mental, physical sensations that we have, those feelings build. Um, we get a lot of ruminating thoughts that, you know, take form. We get these, I didn't coin this term, but it's something I heard it somewhere else, but like these thought forms where it's like the story that we're hearing in our head. And with anxiety, it seems to be like there's a story that goes along with it. And there's different scenarios that kind of run through our brains with it. And if we can kind of compare that anxiety and those stories against intuition being like more of an observer perspective, I kind of look at intuition as like different degrees. And so, like, a lower degree of intuition is more about, we just get information that comes in. And so, you know, it could be very simple, like subjective rather, that, like, for example, like the stove is hot. We know the stove is hot. But it's very subjective. there's not really emotion with it. It's just like, here's some info for you. Now, then the next degree, and I think there's like an intensity that builds rather than an emotion with the intuition. But the second or middle level is more of that gut feeling, that intuitive hit that you get sometimes where, oh, I feel like I need to give this person a call. I haven't talked to them in a while. Or I haven't seen this person in a while. Maybe I should see if I can schedule a visit with them. Um, and it might be something also that, compared to the first degree, the milder form where it's just information and there's not much to do with it, with this middle degree, it's something that you might do something with it, but it's not really urgent, right? So it might be something that might go on your to-do list. So maybe it's something you can do this week or tomorrow or whatever, but it's not like it has to be done right now. And then the third degree is something that's really urgent. And so it's like the I don't know, like the foghorn that people blow when, the races take off or just to get your attention. So it's kind of like you hear these like statements in your head, like get out of the way
Mm-hmm.
or move now or leave, or like this really strong feeling, intensity that I need to check in with somebody, or I need to go now from wherever I am. I need to go. I need to go somewhere else. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. So a couple of things. I loved how you like the easiest way to categorize the difference between anxiety and intuition is essentially feelings and emotions, right? Like anxiety is so anchored in heavy feelings, sometimes unpleasant feelings, most of the time, quite frankly.
Right.
Whereas intuition, it sounds like it's much more neutral. And the word that you use of intensity is absent feelings, but still illustrates how you can define the difference between anxiety and intuition. So I thought that was really great.
Yeah, the metaphor I'm getting about that intensity also, it's kind of like
uh
turning the volume up.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. Um, there are lots of stories that exist out there in the spiritual world, and certainly not even in the spiritual world, around people who just got that urgent intuitive hit, like
Mm.
at the stoplight, even though the light was green, they knew to stop, or they were like walking into a street and at the last minute knew not to put their foot in the road, and then a car came whizzing by. I think every human being has probably had an experience like that and probably not even chalked it up much to intuition, right? But somewhere in there is an intuitive experience, right?
Yeah, I think another example, like I've experienced this myself, and I know other people have too, but let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're traveling somewhere, and maybe it's somewhere that you travel to like often, um, and there might be like one or two ways to get there, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you might, be traveling and on your way to this place, but then you might get like this hit, this intuitive feeling that I maybe should take the other way today.
Mm-hmm.
Or, it's kind of like you might be traveling on a throughway or a highway. Maybe you're taking a longer traveling trip and you're following your GPS and everything like that. But something says, I should maybe get off maybe two exits before because
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing like on the GPS traffic looks like it's really getting backed up. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I don't want to get stuck in that, like I'm being sort of guided, like get off sooner.
Yeah. So where does intuition come from?
It's connected to like our third eye chakra
Mm,
or our mind's eye,
got it. Can you
and
give
which is
a quick?
also connected to like our clair senses.
Okay. So we've talked about this on previous episodes. So could you give like a down and dirty definition of what a third eye chakra looks like? what it does?
So the third eye or the mind's eye, it's the place in our brain where we actually daydream or we have dreams,
Mhm.
or it's like, like if you remember, like in school and you weren't really paying attention and you would drift off, and you would start to drift off into like whatever story is going on in your head, and you might see pictures in your head. That's that's where the third eye is. And it's kind of like works in conjunction with like intuition. It Let me think here for a second. It's kind of like, the analogy I'm getting is kind of like intuition is like the feed coming in, and the chakra for the third eye is kind of like the speaker
Oh.
or the TV.
Oh, that's great. That makes so much
So
sense.
so like the intuition might be like your cable feed in, right?
Mhm.
But then the actual TV where you're actually watching everything, that's the chakra.
Okay, so that's how intuition comes in. So talk to us a little bit about how anxiety comes in. Where does that come
Um
from? What is that rooted in?
Anxiety a lot of times comes from a lot of times our past experiences and our fears,
Yeah.
and fears outside of our comfort zones when we're
Mhm.
in a particular position or environment. We Anxiety kind of draws off of negative or worst case scenario experiences, I find.
Mhm.
And so like your anxiety reminds you about all the things that went wrong before.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you and I
And it
personally have
also,
talked about this
yeah,
before too. Yeah.
and it also can be creative, and it can lead into sort of almost build into like a catastrophic thinking where your mind is just building and building this story in this scenario into like a worst case scenario or disaster even, because that's why anxiety gets so intense. And now I know we were talking, you and I, about anxiety and intuition earlier. What are like some of the feelings that you get with anxiety? I know you were telling me a little bit about that earlier.
Yeah, so anxiety manifests for me in a couple ways. I think the biggest one is, well, I'll cry, like it just the
Mhm.
unpleasantness of feeling it. Um, I lose concentration, right? It's difficult for me to focus on something. And certainly, even if the anxiety itself has passed, I typically can't sleep for a good 12 to 24 hours after I've felt a heavy sense of anxiety. So
Mhm.
and sometimes my stomach might get a little upset too, but it manifests very physically and unpleasantly for me. um, you and I have talked about the anxiety I have, and I'm happy to share it here because I hope that it helps other people, about the anxiety I have around work. And for
Mm.
me, the work situation where sometimes there's more than one person can reasonably do, and I find that experience to be overwhelming. And so I have a sense of anxiety about going into work every day because my body, my mind, everything is reminding me of previous experiences that have been unpleasant for those reasons.
Right,
And then it starts manifesting physically for me, right?
right.
So um, that's pretty natural, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, like I have different anxieties. And so, yeah, it's kind of like there's a manifesting behind it, like a building of it,
Hmm.
of the emotion. And, you know, like when I first was feeling recently the like pain symptoms of a potential kidney stone,
Oh, yeah.
I had a lot of anxiety around that. And it was very triggering because when that came up, it reminded me of my experience that I had with the previous kidney stone. And so
Mhm.
I've already been through that. I already know that story, and I know how that went. And I didn't really want to go through that again. So that gave me some anxiety, and some anxiety. Like a lot of times, anxiety is formed around things that really happen. um, but also another point I feel like my guides want to make also is, it builds on things that maybe are truth or that have happened in the past, but our anxiety also is creative, where it builds off of things that have never happened before also.
Mhm.
And so it goes into those worst case scenarios that you've never even experienced before.
Mhm.
And you may not even be in the environment to create such a disaster, but your mind is creating it.
So fascinating. So, what does intuition feel like for you then? Like, how does it
S-
personally show up in your body and your mind?
so it shows up as like the different degrees as I spoke to earlier. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's just information, sometimes it's a little bit more of like a nudge, like the middle degree of like, oh, maybe I should call that person. Or it's kind of like during the week when you and I text, and every now and then I'll get a sense that I'm not sure what's going on your end, but I feel like I
Yeah.
need to check in, and I'll shoot you a text, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's so funny. So Abby, my sister, as you all know, that will happen to her all the time with me. I'll get a random text from her in the middle of the day, and she's like, "Are you okay?" Because she's picking up on whatever energy I'm
Mhm.
feeling right in
Right.
that particular moment. And now it's like really funny to have both you and her in the mix picking up on that. Yeah. So okay, so that makes sense. So that's how you feel intuition. Got it.
Yeah, and I also, with my intuition, I get more of an intensity feeling like in my solar plexus or gut area, that
Hmm.
almost it's like comparing, or very similar to feeling like when you're excited about something, like the butterflies that people get in their stomach. It's that kind of feeling.
Hmm. Yep. Makes sense. So for me, um, intuition is definitely much less emotional, and I would certainly never describe it as painful or uncomfortable like the way I would with anxiety.
Anxiety. Mhm.
Even if the intuition is saying like, don't do something, it's still not necessarily associated with discomfort as much as it is with intensity. So there's like an objectivity to it a little bit where I'm not like I'm not upset or crying or my palms aren't sweating. I just know a certain thing. And intuition for me, it's probably more subtle than yours, right? Just based on the fact that your third eye is more developed. But I think that most people still, like for me, intuition is a knowing or a feeling. Sometimes it's like a comfort with a decision that I've made. Like once if I've been oscillating on something and then I finally decide to go a certain path and I feel at peace with that, like that's
Mhm.
my intuition showing up and saying like, this is okay, right? This is an okay step for you to take. Um, Yeah, and every now and then it's subtle. And I think that that's the thing about intuition that might be important for like people like me or normal people to hear is that sometimes it's not always a massive song and dance, right? It's a very subtle experience and that you have to appreciate the subtlety of those signs in order to recognize that that is your intuition that's coming into play.
And something I wanted to bring up is, now I think most people can probably relate to this, but if we think back in our life, there has been times where we made a decision to do something, but prior to making that decision, something said to us, maybe don't do that or do this instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
And many times when that's happened and we didn't listen to that, things maybe didn't go how we expected they would go. And so if we think back and rewind to those instances, those are examples of intuitive hits that you probably got but didn't know what they were.
Yeah, such a good example. So that leads into my next question for you, which is if someone wants to become more intuitive, like what are things that they could think about or do or experience to just enhance that intuitiveness that they possess?
Well, one of the best tools would be meditation,
Yeah.
because meditation teaches you how to listen internally and quiet
Mhm.
your mind and shut out the external noise. And so when you can do that and when your brain can get there, the messages that from the intuition can come through clearer
Mhm.
and they can get your attention quicker.
Yep. Yep. If someone's listening to this and they say, I can't meditate, I might propose, I would still say try. But sometimes something you can do is just one thing at a time. Like if you're folding laundry, just think about the experience of folding laundry. Like
Being
literally
present.
just yes.
Put your phone aside
Yes.
so it's not in front of you and just pay attention to what you're folding. Think
Mhm.
about, oh, this shirt I'm folding, oh, I wore it for this. So you're kind of
Mhm.
being in the moment with your clothes.
Mhm. And I think that that gets the mind in a place enough over time where it can probably that third eye can receive more intuitive hits. It's that idea of being present. You should still try to meditate.
Being being
I'm a
present,
pragmatist.
and being mindful also, just being
Yeah,
mindful.
yeah.
It's kind of like also being like mindful eating. Like,
Mhm.
put our phones away and actually just look at, smell, taste actually what you're eating.
Yep, for sure. Have you ever seen so you see, clients a lot, obviously, in your
Yeah.
practice, right? Both for Reiki and for mediumship readings.
Yeah.
So, do you have any stories of or an experience where you've seen someone who's not been following their intuition and what that plays out as? Or do you have any stories of the opposite, where they've really been leaning into their intuition and that's come through in a reading or a Reiki session? Any examples?
Let me think here because I have examples on both sides, but let me think here for a second. Okay, so I think I kind of want to use, I'll call us our MOTS team collective,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Because we
Mhm.
have a story about the podcast and how things came to be.
Mhm.
And, we've gone certain directions with certain things and tried different things because we were getting like a gut feeling about something, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And even with like, let me think here because there's so many examples.
Mhm.
Um I think just the fact that, like, let's see, for myself, when I get like a nudge or a hit to like give someone a business card, like
Mm.
I might be, um actually this is good. I have a good story about this now.
Okay.
So so probably 4 or 5 years ago, um at another massage franchise where I was working, I was doing Reiki there, And about 4 or 5 years ago, this client I had, we had a really powerful Reiki session and also a reading a little bit with it. And her dad came through in spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And the session was really powerful. And at the time, I had felt like I wanted to I felt like there was more that probably her and I would do work together. I wasn't sure if it was just going to be Reiki or what, but I felt like we weren't done. And
Mm-hmm.
so I gave her a business card. I said, "All right, this is how you get a hold of me." I said, "I feel like we have more work to do." And so they held on to it and they held on to it for like 4 or 5 years. And recently they actually scheduled an appointment for a reading with me this past Friday, actually. And they scheduled the appointment, but I didn't know who they were. And I kind of asked the question, how did you find me?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Well, I like to think you kind of found me." I'm like, "Okay." So, like, I didn't know the story yet. And so she came in for the reading Friday, and this is kind of an example of how readings can go sometimes. Like, she came in for like a mediumship reading, and we did do a little mediumship, and some people and her dad came through again. But then the guides were like, I was connecting a lot of different things with her, just energy in general about like some different things that she was like struggling through right now with like some different life choices and
Mm-hmm.
what do I do next, kind of those types of things. And but she said, after we got into the reading, it finally came up and she told me the story of how we met. And then she said back then, I think it was maybe a few days after that session, she said that she wanted a sign from the universe to know whether or not she was going to be doing some more work with me. And so she said, she got really specific and she said to the universe, "All right, if I'm supposed to do some more work with him, I want you to show me a snake, but not just a picture. I want a real snake."
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, "That's what I want to see." So it was a few days later, she went into a local crystal shop, um, and she was in browsing around, and I think she might have been with her niece or something. And suddenly, a new customer walks in, and they walk in with a live snake wrapped around their neck.
Stop it.
Yeah. And then it's a store that I'm affiliated with also, and I've been there and they know who I am. And then she said after that, she couldn't believe she saw the snake. But then after that, my name got brought up somehow.
Okay.
So that was kind of a cool story that just happened just recently, like
Yeah.
in the last 48 hours.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful example of when you lean into your intuition. And then she asked for sign. We should do an episode on signs at some point, like what they are, how to ask for them. But
Test it out. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, that's a beautiful story of intuition. That's awesome, Leo. I
Yeah. I
love
thought that
that.
was really cool.
That's really cool.
And that just shows me and it helps me just to kind of continue to trust when I get those nudges to listen to them.
Yeah.
Because there was a reason I gave her the business card back then.
Yeah. You just didn't know it at the time.
No, I knew there was a reason, but I didn't know when and where and if we would reconnect. But all I knew is I needed to give her the card.
And that was what, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that's so crazy. I love that. That's a beautiful story. I think I'm not sure we have much more else to talk about other than I just wanted to do a shout out, and I think you did too, about anxiety and mental health.
Mhm.
Right. So we talked a lot about intuition and leaning into it, but for anyone who's been following our podcast, you know that Leo, Abby, and I are really big advocates of getting help in the mental health space in any capacity for whatever you need. And so if you feel like your anxiety is overwhelming, is inhibiting your ability to have like a productive life, go get help, right? There are lots of mental health resources out there. I think we've done a lot of work as a society to destigmatize searching for mental health, but we certainly encourage anyone who's been experiencing anxiety and its symptoms to go get the help that they need to feel better.
Yeah. And also, to also help with anxiety in general as well, like on a lighter note, we've talked about energy protection, and
Yeah.
we have a lot of information on how to create that bubble, and we go over it in one of our earlier episodes. So if you're curious, go back to that episode and check it out.
That's a great point. So, yes, because our anxiety is sometimes not always caused by ourselves. It could be picking up on something else in the environment. Right. And so that energetic protection is super helpful. That's a great shout out. I did not think of that. Thanks, Leo.
Yeah, and because, a lot of us that are highly sensitive that experience anxiety and intuition, we're like very strong and sensitive empaths. And
Yeah.
so when we're in certain environments or around certain people, we can very easily like pick up other people's stuff, and it kind of gets stuck to us. And with the bubble, that can help kind of prevent that sticking to us. So we can empathize and have compassion, but not like wear their stuff.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful point. So smart, Leo. Thank you. Okay. Should we do Feed Your Soul? Should we transition over?
Yeah, let's feed the soul. What do you
Okay.
have, Erin?
Yeah, I'm gonna do Feed the Soul. Me and Kitten, me and my cat. Okay. So there's a book that I recently bought. It's called 365 Ways to Strengthen Your Spirituality. Simple Ways to Connect with the Divine. And it's by Alexandra Shorin. And as you can imagine, it's an extensive book. It's 300 plus pages long. So what I'm going to do for this segment today is intuitively open up to a page and do a reading from that page, because each of the 365 ways, they're fairly short. They're only a paragraph or two long. So I am going to go ahead and
Okay.
Attitude of Gratitude, day 76.
Okay.
The more you give thanks, the more you get. Imagine an ungrateful child. His or her parents will be unlikely to reward spiteful behavior when receiving gifts. Spirit may act similarly toward those who do not show regular gratitude. An alternative explanation is that those who are more thankful for the small things in life truly expand their capacity for joy. Treasuring the small things in life, each small moment makes it a treasure. Developing your attitude of gratitude depends on how you tend to go through life right now. Be honest with yourself. Do you have a pragmatic or pessimistic temperament? Are you generally upbeat or an optimist? Do you find yourself feeling openly ungrateful for things that happen to you? Start by cutting down on negative phrases. Everybody gets grouchy when they miss the bus, but you can strive to find the good in every situation, such as a good conversation, good weather, or good health. Add positive statements of thanks to Spirit in your life. When something lucky happens to you, say a quick thank you to Spirit. If you get the opportunity to eat some wonderful food, meet a terrific new friend, or find a penny on the ground, don't forget to say thanks. Closing sentiment. Find reasons to be thankful today and write down these blessings from Spirit.
I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. I don't I don't know if our spirit team, and I'll be curious what you think, if they necessarily hold back from us if we're not grateful. I just feel like the idea is more, if we're grateful, more comes in, period. How do you feel about that?
So I want to tell you what I think about why that might be a good excerpt from the book, even though it may feel like it doesn't necessarily connect right now with what we were talking about today. But
Yeah.
how I see it is like a lot of us that go through anxiety is we worry, right? We worry about stuff. And we worry about stuff and we struggle and we have challenges in life. And as we're going through those struggles, we find it harder and harder to find maybe the silver linings. And so a way to sort of maybe try to balance out like the worry and the pessimism and the negative thoughts is to see and like verbalize the gratitude and what we are grateful for.
That is a beautiful way to balance it. I love that.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I think we're good. And thank
How
our
about Kitty?
listeners.
Does Kitty have anything?
I don't know. She's pretty. She's cleaning her paw now. I think Kitten's good. She just really enjoyed being part of this podcast, and she wants everyone to know that she is a big help to me with my own anxiety.
Awesome.
Okay, there's her credit. All right.
I have one more thing.
Yeah, what's that?
I have something funny that I just found I think it was last night actually. I found this on YouTube. But I found on this channel that plays singing bowls, they did a video of singing bowls with also cat purring.
Whoa.
So I think it would be funny is we can put a link in the show notes for that. And if people want to see what that's about, that would be kind of funny.
I love that.
I'll send that to you also.
I love that. That would be excellent. I've heard many times that like the purring vibration of cats is supposed to be like very healing. So that doesn't surprise me to put it alongside singing bowls. That's brilliant. Okay.
Yep.
That's just made the episode.
It's no pun intended, but it's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. On that note, we want to thank our listeners, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to Mystery of the Soul. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, topic suggestion, or just want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you. You can visit our website at mysteryofthesoul.com, reach us on Instagram, or email us at mysteryofthesoulpodcast@gmail.com. If you're interested in booking a session with Leo, you can contact us at Mystery of the Soul or visit Leo's website directly at leomediummccarthy.net.